রিভার্বটা কেটে দিন, রিভার্ব।
Good morning. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Taso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorvamritam Gamaya Avir Maedhi Rudrayate Dakshinamukam Te Namam Pahi Nityam. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Reach us through and through ourself, and evermore protect us from ignorance by thy sweet, compassionate face. Let us sit quietly a few moments and meditate on the Supreme Spirit in any way we please. Bhadrang karnebhi shrunuyama devaha Bhadram pashyemakshabhiryajatraha Stiraerangae stushtuvagam sastanubhi Vyashema deva hitai yadayuhu. May we hear with our ears what is auspicious. May we see with our eyes what is auspicious. May we enjoy with strong limbs and bodies the life allotted to us. Contemplation in spiritual life. The first question is, what is contemplation? The second question is, what is spiritual life? How does it differ from ordinary life? What additional information is given to us by using those terms? Of course, ordinary life begins at birth, and of course it also ends at death. At least it appears to end at death. And it appears to end at death, but according to Hinduism, different sects of Hinduism, according to different sects of Buddhism, it really does not end at death. Death is really in the drama of our life. Death is a semicolon at best, maybe even only a comma. But certainly it is not a period. It is not something that is the end of everything. It looks like that because we're so used to thinking of ourselves as bodies. And of course the body decays, the body is cremated, the body is buried, something is done to remove the body. It is no longer viable, it is no longer effective, so we get rid of it. But what we maintain is that the body is like a piece of clothing, that we use it for a certain length of time until it is worn out, or possibly until the fashion changes and people look at you in a strange way if you wear such old-fashioned things. Anyway, you get rid of it. It's not much. Certain things happen and you feel that it's perfectly right to get rid of this clothing, this form, the exterior of things. And we understand that the real essence of things is on the interior, it's not on the surface. And these particular spiritual traditions, Hinduism, Buddhism, they have, as part of their fundamental understanding, the idea that the body is something that belongs to us, but is not the essence of ourselves. So the question then is, what is the essence of ourselves? What are we here for? What are we supposed to do? Is there something that we have to accomplish while we're here? Of course, we tell children, yes, you have to go to school, you have to acquire a good education, you have to do all these things, then you have to raise a family and so forth and so on. So we make these things plain in our own way to the next generation. But the real answers we really don't have. I mean, we're told, yes, there is heaven, and for some, and of course there's hell, and in some traditions there are many hells. There's no lack of hells. You can choose whichever one you want to feel comfortable with. So it is generally admitted that there is something after death. That death is somehow just a comma or a semicolon, but it is not a period. It is not the end of our existence. So spiritual life implies that we're looking for that. We're looking for that which is the essence of things and not just the appearance of things. And of course that in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, there's a beautiful description of this state of mind. Yajnavalkya, who is the sage that is quoted in that section of the Upanishads, tells his wife Maitreyi that he is going to leave this worldly existence and devote himself exclusively to spiritual pursuits. Now, this was done in the old Indian tradition. There were 4 stages of life, and everyone was expected to proceed from one to the other. Of course, there's the childhood and the age of instruction, the age of teaching, the age of going to schools. And then there is the adoption of the people get married and they have children, so that becomes the householder stage. But that was never thought to be the end or the last stage of spiritual development or existence in society. It was always understood that that period of time lasts long enough to bring up the next generation. And after some time, when the next generation is fully capable of assuming its responsibilities, then the older people retire to a forest or a forest hermitage, to a secluded life where their main concern is spiritual practice, spiritual realization. And it was felt that simply to leave one's existence, one's whole existence for childhood, youth, and retirement years was not sufficient. That there was a purpose to existence which was not being served in that way. And the purpose to existence was that you have come here and you have been told and instructed in so many things. Now, once these duties are basically accomplished, it's your responsibility to go to a deeper level of existence in which you begin to perceive the reality of the spirit that is not physical, that is not mental. There is an entity which was always understood, which in all religions. Basically, that's what differentiates a religion from something which is merely a social movement or an intellectual movement. The religions always understood that our tendency to neglect that last stage of existence was bringing great harm to ourselves, that we were not fulfilling the real purpose of our existence. To conceive the next generation, to educate the next generation, to carry on life, that was always accepted. But there was always the idea that there is a higher purpose than that. This is the ordinary existence, the ordinary life. But the higher purpose is to find the reality that the great sages of every tradition have always maintained. Underneath the surface of this apparent existence, there is something which is eternal. This existence and everything associated with it belongs to time. It has come, it stays for some time, and then it disappears. So everything this was never accepted in any of the fundamental religions, the major religions. This was never accepted as a final analysis. There was always known, I say not thought, much more than thought, it was always known in every tradition that beyond that the normal purpose of life and existence, there is a more sacred duty that every embodied being has. And that is to find that in our own life, in our own experience, in our own knowledge, that which is eternal, that which does not change. You see how degraded our existence has actually become. We don't even accept the idea in general that there could be such a thing, or else we accept it in a very sort of a make-believe way. Yes, there is such a thing. But that it really is significant, in general, we don't accept. But that is a religion, and all the religions have that aspect to them. That is where religion becomes essential. It has to wake us up from this refusal to recognize anything except this ordinary existence as being definitive, meaningful, and significant in our life. In theory, we may know this. In theory, we may accept it. But if we look at ourselves, actually, as we live, as we move, as we develop, really speaking, most of us do not live as though we accepted that there is an infinite, eternal reality that is accessible to us, that actually turns out to be the goal of our existence here. That is the primary goal. That the other goals of ordinary civic life are only really supports for this final, ultimate goal of discovering that which does not change, that which is fundamental, that which is totally satisfying. So this, the title today is Contemplation in Spiritual Life. And in order to make that goal meaningful, we have to practice it. And the question is, how do we practice it? That is the basic difficulty. Yes, I believe that there is a divine reality that is eternal, but I'm told by prayer, by meditation, by karma yoga, bhakti yoga, raja yoga, jnana yoga, by all the yogas, I can reach that, I can get an understanding of that, can get an appreciation and a knowledge of that. But it generally remains at a very theoretical level, at a very distant and possible goal, as yes, undoubtedly this is what we're after, but we don't really reach for that. But this is actually the reaching for the infinite, the reaching for the eternal. Even though we don't know what it is, we don't know how to reach it, except in a very theoretical way by reading the scriptures, which gives us instructions that are difficult to understand. Still, that is the reason. The real reason that we were born. And then those spiritual traditions such as Buddhism and Hinduism, who believe in the fact that this is not the only chance we get, that life comes again and again, our chance to move on this path comes to us again and again. So all of these are the basic movements that surround us as we move through life. And among these means to try to achieve that depth, to see the deeper significance of things, contemplation is one of the prime means, and it is practiced essentially in all religions in one form or another. So the question is, what is this? What is this contemplation? What are we contemplating on? The thing that we are contemplating on is the goal. What should be the goal? What should be our life? What should be our activity here? What should we aim for? And of course, there's a certain obvious things in this world. There's we have to manage our sustenance in this world, and certain practical goals are there that everyone fully understands. But what is the spiritual goal that we're trying to reach? What is the essence that we're trying to attain? Everything else is, as it were, in a way, it's a little bit of make-believe. It's what's accessible to us now. What's in front of us is we have to have our education, we have to have our employment, we have to arrange for our retirement, we have to make sure that our children are well cared for, and all of that. That completely absorbs us in most cases. But the message of religion is these things come with the territory. You were born, therefore these things are there. But there's a further question that is beyond all of this, and even if these intermediate questions are fully solved, we will not be satisfied. We will still feel that we have not reached anything definite. Yes, we have been able to make the things make life practical. We've been able to fulfill the desires of our families or the desires of our country, or, all these things we have been able to do. But the primary thing that we really need to know is, what is the reality here? And what is the appearance? Everything else that we do is an appearance. The reality is that which never changes. That is the definition that we employ in terms of discussing this at the deepest level. The reality is that which never changes. And then normally we see, well, we don't see anything that never changes. Everything that we experience has come into existence at a certain time, at a certain point in time, and it is maintained and goes on for some further period of time, and eventually it disappears. And normally we're quite satisfied with that. Yes, I have done this much, and this family has been benefited, and the family also recognizes there's a certain time in which the soul leaves the body, and that's generally all we consider. But when the soul leaves the body, it reincarnates. This is fully explained in the Gita, in the Bhagavad Gita. So what is it? In other words, net result, what is the net result of all that we have achieved in life? We have fulfilled our obligations, we have achieved certain things, definitely something has been accomplished, but on the ultimate level, very little has changed. The hope is that in the process of making all the other changes, we have learned something. And we're ready for the next time around to do things on a deeper level, on a better level. So we hope that we have learned something, but what is it that we really need to know? What is the goal of life? So the Vedantic idea, which is expressed also in other religions, but expressed in a different way. They say they want to live with God, they want to be in God's presence. All these different statements are made. The whole thing that is summarized is that the reality of things has not yet been achieved. And the reality of things is known. When do we know that we've achieved the reality? When we have realized that which never changes. That is called the realization of God. That is called the experience of reality. That is called by so many different names. So the contemplation in spiritual life, contemplation is thought to be one of the major methods of achieving that realization. And contemplation has been described in so many different ways, but ordinary life begins at birth and ends at death. Spiritual life begins with a yearning for eternity, with a conviction of a continuing existence, with a consciousness of a guiding power that is accessible, that can be experienced. That is the difference between the spiritual life and every other struggle, every other thing that we strive for in life. All these things are important, worthwhile, necessary even. But the only thing that is ultimate, the only thing that is beyond, or that takes us beyond that which is temporary, is the realization of that which is beyond time, which cannot change, because it always was and it always will be. That is the realization of God, the realization of the Spirit, the realization of eternity, whatever you want. That which is unchangeable is also eternal. It has never changed, it has never come into existence. And becoming identified with that, becoming aware of that, becoming one with that, which never changes, we also enter that realm of the changeless, where there's no more dissatisfaction, there's no more yearning for something beyond. There's a sense of utter fulfillment. This is what the great sages who have experienced this condition tell us. So, how do we get this yearning for eternity, conviction of a continuing existence, consciousness of a guiding power accessible to prayer? How do we get this? And there, in a sense, the only answer that can be given is, you know it when you have it, and you know it when you're yearning for it and you don't have it. It is as in the Viveka-Chudamani, which is a work of Shankaracharya, which explains the basic human standpoint, the human condition. And he says there are three things which are very difficult to obtain. Durlabham. Trayam, three things that are difficult to attain. And what is the source from which you obtain it? Devanugraha hetukam. Deva anugraha, the mercy of the Lord. Now that doesn't seem to be very hopeful, because what we expected when we asked this question, we expected it'd be something that we can do. There's a method and a system that we can employ to reach that state of certainty, to reach that state of experience of reality. But the situation as described by Shankaracharya is these things, namely manushyatvam, a human birth, mumukshutvam, the longing for liberation, mahapurusha samshrayaha, the protecting care of a guide, of a great soul. These three things are devanugraha hetukam, are the result of the grace of God. So you say, well, if it's the grace of God, what hope have I? It may come, it may not come. That's logical, but it's not psychological. The psychology is that whatever means we have of solving the problems of this life, that is to be yearned for. Sri Ramakrishna made this point, that the basic need in spiritual life is yearning. Well, you say, okay, I was born as a human being. I have a longing for liberation, and there are many wise people around that could offer me protecting care, but I still don't find that grace. I still don't find the experience of yearning for that alone, or being absorbed in God alone. I still don't find that. I find myself on the outside looking in. So how do you solve that problem? And Shankaracharya does not explain it, but he gives the reason for it. Devanugraha hetukam. Hetu, it's caused by this deep yearning, this yearning for infinity, this giving up of all temporary things to reach the infinite and the eternal. That yearning comes devanugraha hetukam, by the grace of God. And if you think of it deeply within, that you say, well, that's hopeless. How do I know I'm going to get the grace of God? I can yearn for this and yearn for that, and nothing happens. What kind of a message is that? But that is the message. And by wishing the situation to be different, that doesn't necessarily make it different. This Shankaracharya, this ancient sage, what he's maintained at the very beginning of his instructions, Devanugraha hetukam. Anugraha, the mercy or the compassion of a great soul. So, but I yearn for that. How do I get that? And how do I know a great soul when I see one? You know, people used to, even Sri Ramakrishna, when he was walking, some people didn't recognize him as being a special being. We recognize him in that way, and we offer great salutations, great worship, and great devotion to him. But many people, he was living in one of the biggest cities of India at that time, and people did not necessarily recognize it, that he was anything special. One priest, I think, of one of the temples, he maintained, oh yes, Sri Ramakrishna is there, we have heard of him. But they were not considered anything special. So how do you get these basic conditions that have been laid down for getting to a deeper level within ourselves? How do you satisfy these basic conditions? Some of these conditions can be satisfied. You can, within yourself, you can raise a yearning for attaining the infinite and the eternal. You can study books and acquire a conviction of a continuing existence, a consciousness of a guiding power accessible to prayer. I can do all that in a theoretical way. But what is it that makes it real? What is it that stands within my heart and is a huge inspiration to continue this struggle and to persevere? Really speaking, you cannot point to anything very specific. Certain things will help. This type of life will help, definitely. That type of life is antithetical to it. You can point all these things. You can till the ground, in other words. You can prepare the ground of your mind. You can prepare the ground of your consciousness, of your understanding for the realization of this great depth that lies hidden within each one of us. We can prepare for that. We can yearn for it. But the realization has always been said to come by the grace of God. So what is within our power? What is within our power is this yearning. Vyakulata, Sri Ramakrishna said. So contemplation in spiritual life means with keeping within ourselves this yearning, keeping that desire for reaching the highest, keeping that dissatisfaction with anything that is not the highest, keeping that all burning brightly within ourselves, that we can do. But the actual experience, the actual results, Devanugraha hetu come by the grace of God, which means really we don't understand how they come, but we can yearn. And they say that it's like a young child. A young child does not know exactly what it wants, but it looks at its mother with a great sense of yearning, and the mother understands and fulfills the needs of the child because the mother knows what the child wants, even though the child doesn't itself really is not able to express it. That is very much the same for each one of us in our life. What we have control over is our yearning. We can do things that will destroy that yearning or minimize it. We can do this, that, and the other, divide our time in so many different ways, and make it effectively impossible for that yearning to arise within us. That we can do. We have a great power of the negative. And at the same time, we can do the opposite. At the same time, we can yearn for God. We can yearn for the realization of that perfection. We can look within ourselves to try to see that which does not change. The one characteristic that God has that is shared with nothing else is this idea of unchangeability. What is it within our experience that does not change? That is at the very heart of our existence. And at the heart of that is that divine reality. So those are the things that we can do. We can strongly yearn. And that is our basic, you could say that is actually the child's basic weapon against the mother to satisfy the child's desires. The child simply yearns for that, cries for it, is totally dissatisfied unless it gets it. Eventually the mother will, in some way, to some extent, satisfy it. That condition is our condition in our adult existence also. We can yearn for God's realization. We can yearn for understanding that infinite, eternal reality. If you ask for definite steps, yes. Mantras are given, you can repeat the mantra, but just repeating the mantra itself is not as helpful as doing it with that intense yearning for that deeper reality, that the unchangeable essence of our life. So there's so many things we can do. But the prime characteristic that we must have is that yearning, vyakulata. And that contemplation is one of the ways, it really in a way is the only way. Because whenever we want something which we do not have, we have to yearn for it. I don't have certain things, I need them, so I ask somebody, can they get these things for me? Or in some way, I try to achieve that. So, and this contemplation, basically, it's standing in front of God and expressing our yearning for that which does not change, that which is real, that which is all-satisfying, that which is eternal. When it comes, it comes. That's what the great souls who have experienced it explain. Whenever it comes, when it comes, it comes. You know it when it's there. But the way to it is that yearning, that infinite hunger. And there we can elevate that hunger within ourselves. We can find ourselves dissatisfied with that which changes. We want that which does not change, which is reliable, which cannot be eliminated, that which is fundamental, that which is eternal. So with that great yearning in our hearts, we go full speed ahead. That much we can do. But when the actual result that comes will come by the grace of that which appears, the grace of that which is the essential reality. So it is God that fulfills that basic desire. And this contemplation, this is really a yearning for that. And it is nothing that we satisfy, that we have the right and the privilege and the ability to yearn for that and nothing else. And that's where the difficulty comes. Because we yearn for so many other things. We want this, we want that. Those other things have to become secondary. The main desire, the main search has to be for the basic reality, for the essence that is within ourselves, and for the essence that is within, in the heart of everything else. That is the basic truth that we can describe. At the heart of everything that appears, at the heart of everything that is changeable, that is impermanent, at the heart of that, there is that reality which never changes. So in so many ways, by yearning for that, by yearning to experience that, by those means, that opening can come. And that is what we call Deva Anugraha Hetukam, the grace of God. We call it the grace of God because we don't know how else to describe it. But the grace of God is something that can be worked for with great intensity through our own yearning. The subject for next Sunday is the Dhammapada and the Bhagavad Gita, a comparison. This talk will be given by Swami Vedananda. On Sunday evenings, Swami Vedananda holds an online class at 6 p.m. on the foundational texts of Indian philosophy. The Zoom and YouTube links are available on our website's homepage, as well as in the monthly email bulletin. On Wednesday evenings, we have Vespers with meditation at 7:30 p.m. in this auditorium. On Friday evening, Swami Vedananda holds a scripture class in the Old Temple at 7:30 p.m. Please use the auditorium entrance on Filbert Street. The current text for study is the Bhagavad Gita. The class is also streamed on YouTube and Facebook. Your cooperation in wearing a mask is greatly appreciated. If you would like to make an offering, a collection plate will be available on the cart at the door as you exit. There is also a mounted offering box near the auditorium door in the foyer. You and your friends are cordially invited to attend all our services. After the lecture today, there will be a question and answer session in Vivekananda Hall, and all are welcome. Om Dyahu Shanti, Antariksham Shanti, Prithivi Shanti, Apo Shanti, Roshadaya Shanti, Vanaspataya Shanti, Vishwe Deva Shanti, Brahma Shanti, Sarvam Shanti, Shantireva Shanti, Sama Shantiredhi. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om, peace is in heaven, peace is in the sky, on the earth, and in the waters. The herbs, the plants, and the trees are full of peace. The gods are peaceful. Everything in the universe is pervaded by peace. May that infinite, universal peace enter our soul and being. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all.